I want to bring in our panel now. NBCNews.com contributor attorney Raul Reyes, also Zerlina Maxwell. She's the director of progressive programming at Sirius XM. Rachel Bovard is director of policy services at the Heritage Foundation, and MSNBC contributor Charlie Savage, the Washington correspondent at the New York Times. To all of you, thanks for being with me. Let's start with you, Charlie, as we talk about this. Trump supporters showing outrage over the president, teaming up, of course, reaching out with the Democratic leaders, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, over this potential DACA resolution here. So you consider that move. Does it bring with it the possibility of alienating some of his base, as some have suggested, or are they so diehard Trump that even this isn't going to faze him?
That is the most interesting question in politics right now, is if we see President Trump making more deals with Democrats. Of course, he's confronting, and he's complained about it on Twitter, the fact that the Senate has a filibuster rule, and that means that at least 8 Democrats are going to have to come along with any kind of major legislation that passes Congress. If he has to work with Democrats to get over that hurdle so that he can get things done, and he likes to get things done and make deals, that's going to pull him away from an ideologically pure position. So if this isn't just a one-time burp, but a sort of a new pivot for him, it's going to be alienating to the more ideologically pure conservative base. And then the question is, do the hardcore Trump supporters, the 38% of Americans who are giving him positive job approval ratings, come with him? Is this something about, is that a movement that's about Trump as a person? Or if he starts to shift his views, will they abandon him? And that will have major repercussions over the next year or two in politics. Right.
And then you also have those hardcores who very much listen to Donald Trump's high-profile supporters. And of course, they're listening to what they have to say. You have these supporters like Ann Coulter, who put it out there. You have her saying pretty much, tweeting out this point, who doesn't want Trump impeached? How do comments like that, and then you have, Breitbart all there saying amnesty done. How do those play in to this public, the sentiment there? I want to bring in Rachel for that.
I think it just represents that the conservative movement is not monolithic. I mean, I think what you're seeing based on the March on the Mall today is that President Trump remains popular with his base. There was a Wall Street Journal poll last week that just showed that 98% of voters who voted for Trump in the primary and the general still support him. I think a lot of people see through kind of what's happening with the deals with Democrats, and they realize President Trump likes to make a deal. He likes to get things done. And the reality is the Republican leadership in Congress cannot get their act together, cannot give him anything. And so, of course, he's moving to Democrats. Give him a conservative solution and he'll take it. But Republicans in Congress need to get their act together.
Well, get their act together. And this, speaking to that, here's what House Speaker Paul Ryan said during a radio interview yesterday. We'll talk about it on the other side.
We will not, in good conscience, fix a symptom of a problem without dealing with the root cause of the problem. I think Democrats get that. Now, they'll have to stomach the fact that, yes, this president will be successful in doing something that hasn't been done for years, which is advancing some immigration reform. If you're a politician and you're partisan and you don't want to see him be successful, that will be a tough pill to swallow.
Lena, you're with me here speaking to Rachel and getting their act together. Is that somewhat getting their act together? Is there going to be a reaching from a Paul Ryan to the Democrats?
No, I don't anticipate that happening. But I also think it's quite rich to hear Speaker Ryan talk about immigration reform as if this hasn't been an issue since George W. Bush was the president. And Republicans used to be in support of comprehensive immigration reform. It's sort of the lurch towards the far right that's happened since George W. Bush was president and during Obama's term when they ran away from comprehensive immigration reform. And as you recall, the DREAM Act came up for a vote during President Obama's term, and they voted it down. So I think that Republicans do need to get their act together. I do agree with Rachel on that. But I think that I don't think there's any evidence that Paul Ryan is going to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats.
Well, Raul, what is the getting your act together? We have NBC News reporting that's saying, yes, they're working on, working groups to legislatively get something going when it comes to DACA, when it comes to border security. At this point, would you say the party, there's the fracture that it's not going to happen?
Well, it's very complicated right now because we're getting conflicting signals from the president, also from other lawmakers. But first of all, we have to remember this whole crisis is artificial, arbitrary, and really manufactured by Donald Trump himself. So although he has kicked the ball to Congress, remember that this was something he said he would decide. He caved, and now so he himself is sort of pushing it off on Congress. But this is the thing. When we're talking about this move to come up with a replacement for DACA, yes, the momentum may seem to be on the side of protecting these dreamers, but time is not. Every day that passes, we get closer to that 6-month cutoff where DACA will expire. And Democrats want to come up with a solution by, say, October 5th, because that's the last date to renew DACA, whereas Republicans say, oh, we still have 6 months left, and so let's make it work at that time. And all the really complicated work will be in what does the replacement for DACA look like? Will they get legal status, lawful presence, or pathway to citizenship? What does border security mean? And each side, all the parties with stakes involved, have a different, idea of what's that going to mean. And speaking to some of these
everybody has a different version of what it's going to mean. We're still trying to figure out if you have multi-tier levels of deal, what level of deal are we at?
Where we're going to end
up.
up.
And in the meantime, these folks are living in fear because they don't know what's going to happen.
Their lives are really upended, and it is sort of ironic seeing all these Trump supporters out there they're promoting this as something to defend traditional American culture, this large rally. And unless they're defending and promoting indigenous people, mestizos, or Native Americans, that in itself seems a little bit off the mark.
Rachel, I want to bring you in since we're on the subject of DACA here. Do you see the president's position changing here when it comes to the dinner, what came out of the dinner on DACA? Where's it going to go?
Well, first of all, I totally disagree that we're here because this is a manufactured crisis by President Trump. We're here because President Obama made an illegal executive order, and President Trump's own Department of Justice couldn't defend it in court. These laws have to come from Congress, and Trump was right to push it back to them and say, look, make this law. And I think, where conservatives come down on it is they say, look, we're compassionate. We want to address, these DACA recipients. It's unreasonable to uproot someone's life and send them overseas. But conservatives have for a long time been in the position of we want enhanced border security. We want to actually solve the problem. We want to stop these situations from happening in the first place. So I think any solution is going to have to include those fundamental problem-solving issues like border security before we can address anything else.
Well, Charlie, I want to talk to you. Here we are on a weekend. Here we are going through the hurricanes, going through these meetings, and then you have the Democrats putting Trump in kind of a different light here. You have Axios calling it Trump's new world in this article, in which for the first time in his presidency, he's enjoying positive media coverage and coherent reinforcement from his top aides. Of course, I'll throw in there positive being relative, and I'm sure you can weigh in on that relativity. Your thoughts on it?
Well, I think that we have to be a little bit careful as the media to not portray this as something more than it is yet. I mean, this is one meeting in which there's a deal maybe, but it's just an oral deal and people come out of it and they disagree about even what the deal was. Nothing has gone through Congress yet. And so the notion that now we're seeing the new centrist President Trump and everything has changed now and are the far right going to be betrayed by him? This is still a very conservative administration. It's still full of conservatives in places like the Environmental Protection Agency and the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department who have quite changed the way the government is enforcing the law. The judicial nominees that President Trump has put forward to Congress are still very conservative lawyers and thinkers. And so, 1 moment of 1 week looking like this for a president who likes to zig and zag and is not very predictable, I think we still need to be calm here and wait and see how this develops before we pronounce this a new world.
That in mind, Zerlina and Raul, very quickly, where is it going to take us this week? We have him and the UN Security Council as well talking. We have another week where we don't have the diversion of a hurricane.
Right.
And then DACA, hopefully.
Right.
You're right. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Where do we go quickly?
Well, I don't know. It depends what he tweets. It depends what mood he's in when he wakes up. And I think that's the danger of this president. That's what I'm afraid of, is the inconsistency and the lack of the ability as the public to predict what he's going to do.
Right. I think a lot depends on basically the last person to speak with him. As we know, he's a little erratic. But also keep in mind, these people who are coming out protesting a possible deal on DACA, they are loud, but they are not a large group of the Trump voters, because most Trump voters, according to polling from Politico Morning Consult, they favor some type of deal to allow these dreamers to stay. Okay,
we're going to watch that Twitter feed, and we'll get the alerts. We all will. Thank you, Raul Reyes, Elena Maxwell, Rachel Bovard, and Charlie Savage. Thank you.